Hi, writers. You've just come from writing literary essays. You analyzed themes in literature, you wrote about how authors develop these themes, and you wrote about the craft that authors used as well as the ideas they suggested. You're used to writing about ideas and to writing from sources. Even more importantly, the themes that you wrote about were ones that have moral implications, not just in the novels you read, but also in life. Those moral implications related to decisions about how fictional characters choose to be and how you, as a person, might choose to be. That work you did, where you analyzed those moral ideas, that a story suggests and the ways that authors suggest those ideas is work you can do with nonfiction as well. Often, nonfiction authors take up moral dilemmas. A nonfiction text that at first seems lighthearted can actually be tackling a serious issue. I'm thinking, for instance, of Hijinks Shootout. As a piece of journalism, it is entertaining, it tells a good story, but it also reveals some real moral dilemmas raised when your kids play games that simulate violence. These role playing games like Killer. And just as you argued your points about important themes in literature, you can argue your points about important issues raised by nonfiction texts. Today, therefore, we're going to read that text, Hijinks Shootout, and we'll read it initially with the lens of how it suggests two sides of an ethical debate. I do want to say a little bit about the direction we're going in this unit of study and why we'll start this way. The issue of how violence shapes teens is a serious one. Today, you'll be thinking about the impact of simulated violence on teens. It will be interesting for you to compare and contrast these topics to figure out what you what you think about the lasting effects of imagery versus real violence on teens and what that means for ethical stances you'll develop about how teens should be treated. You'll also begin by honing your argument skills, recalling and putting into play the considerable skills you developed in seventh grade, and readying yourself to dive into a troubling real life ethical dilemma. Today, I want to teach you that the text writers read often suggest debatable issues or ethical dilemmas that are hard to figure out and thus worth talking, and writing about. To clarify their own stance on issues that are complicated, writers sometimes decide to argue one side or the other of these dilemmas using all of their argument skills. So when we look at a text like High Stake Jinx, I forgot what it. Oh, Hijinks Shootout. Sorry, it's a piece of journalism. We're going to read this article. There's going to be two sides presented, and neither side it's really obvious which side the article is leaning to, but the article is going to kind of introduce both sides of the argument. One, that teens should be allowed to play violent role-playing games, and then the other side, which kids should not be allowed to play violent role-playing games. I'm going to assign you guys will have partners. I'm going to assign you position 1 or position 2. And partner 1 is going to argue that teens should be allowed to play violent role playing games. And partner 2, that teens should not be allowed to play violent role playing games. Both partners are going to read the article. As you're reading, you're going to jot down notes and kind of form your argument. And then when I say time, I'm going to let you kind of debate with your partner. What's tricky is the article itself is not explicitly about this debate. The article tells an interesting story and teaches a lot of fascinating facts, but it doesn't come right out and say, this shows you that games are bad for kids, or this proves that all kids should play these games. You have to kind of do that thinking. You have to read closely, think about what this text suggests, and the issue that could support your position. A lot of times when you're researching a topic, you have to do this. You have to go out and find it. You're not always going to find articles that say, this is why this should happen. You're not always going to find evidence that's going to blatantly defend your argument. You're going to have to kind of search and really sift through some research. So as you're reading today, once I assign you your position, you're going to have to really search through this article and what parts of it defend the position that you are assigned to take on this. Now, I realize that some of you are not going to believe in the position that you take, and that's totally okay. But for the sake of argument, you're going to have to defend the side that you've been given. So I look forward to reading your writing.